Bismillah ar-Rahman ar-Rahim. Welcome back. It is exactly 8:38 a.m. South African time. We're crossing over to Canada and we're going to be talking to Charlotte Cates. We're going to be looking at the issue around Palestinian prisoners going on a hunger strike. Charlotte Cates, a very good morning to you. Welcome to the program, or rather, a very good evening to you because it's about 11:30 p.m. your time. I do appreciate you possibly staying up just to chat with us. Much appreciated. Thank you.
Thank you so much for the invitation.
Charlotte, who are you and how come you're involved in an amazing initiative like the Samidoun Palestinian Prisoner Solidarity Network? You are the international coordinator. What's the story?
Yes, well, I grew up in the United States, and the United States every year provides over $3.8 billion a year to Israeli occupation and colonization in Palestine. And that's $3.8 billion in weaponry that's going to target the Palestinian people. So, growing up in the United States, becoming politically conscious and involved, and taking a stand against imperialism had to mean standing with the Palestinian people first and foremost, fighting back and resisting against that colonial project because it is so central to U.S. imperialism in the region. And the Palestinian prisoners, the over 5,000 Palestinians locked behind bars right now, but the over 1 million Palestinians jailed since 1948 are on the front lines of the resistance. And there's always, an attempt. And of course, this is something that, is in part of history and struggle everywhere. It's part of the history and struggle in South Africa that imprisonment is used by colonial forces in order to attempt to stop the resistance of the people seeking justice. And so it becomes really important for those of us that want to stand in solidarity with Palestine and want to stand for justice to say that the Palestinian prisoners need our attention, need our solidarity, and need our action to stop this unjust imprisonment and bring an end to 75 years of colonialism.
Please, God, let it end sooner rather than later. And of course, people like yourself all around the world adding their support and their voices to this atrocious situation, this whole issue around the occupation of Palestinian people and their rights. What other initiatives are you involved in before we get back to the story of the Palestinian people? Or the prisoners, rather.
Sure. Well, I mean, as Samidoun, right, we're focused on the prisoners, but that doesn't just mean the prisoners inside Palestine. That also means the prisoners of the Palestinian cause that are jailed outside Palestine. For example, the case of George Ibrahim Abdallah, who's been jailed for over 39 years in French prisons, and with his 40th year in prison approaching today for his involvement in the struggle for the Palestinian cause in the 1980s. Or, right now in the United States, there are 3 Palestinian men who were jailed with sentences of up to 65 years simply for seeking to provide humanitarian support to the Palestinian people. So both in terms of these kinds of cases outside Palestine, as well as linking with the struggles of political prisoners, for example, prisoners of the Black Liberation Movement who are still jailed in the United States, is a part of our work to build international solidarity with the prisoners.
Awesome. In terms of Palestinian people, are you in contact with the Palestinian diaspora in your part of the world? And are we getting the true picture of the atrocities on the Palestinian people? Are we getting a clear enough and a true picture of just how bad or dire it might be?
Well, Samidoun is an international organization, and so we always describe ourselves as an international Arab and Palestinian organization because many of Samidoun's members are Palestinians who are living in exile and diaspora in different places around the world, including here in North America, but also in Europe, in Lebanon, in Brazil, and in various places around the world. So the experiences of Palestinians in exile and diaspora are pretty central to the work that we're doing. And organizing in solidarity with the prisoners is like part and parcel of the struggle for the liberation of Palestine, and not just a separate thing about improving the conditions of the prisoners. It's about bringing the situation to an end that has caused this imprisonment. Unfortunately, in too many places, we're not always getting accurate media. I'm sure that in many cases in South Africa, you're receiving much better reporting about Palestine than we're having, say, in Canada or in the United States, because Canada and the United States have taken institutionally positions that are in defense of Zionism, colonialism, apartheid, and occupation in Palestine. And certainly that's not the case in South Africa, where there's been tremendous popular support for the Palestinian people. Now, of course, popular support is growing in Canada, in the United States, in Europe, and all of these countries whose governments are responsible for the ongoing Zionist crimes taking place in Palestine. But that's definitely not reflected in mainstream media. Many people are turning to social media, to other forms of communication, to hear directly from Palestinians who are organizing inside and outside Palestine for liberation. Because one thing is very clear: even though the corporate media doesn't want to tell these stories, Palestinians are documenting and telling their stories, and have been doing so for over a century of colonialism.
And it still seems to be falling on deaf ears as far as, um, America, and, the Western world is concerned, because undoubtedly they have vested interests in Israel, and the fact that Israel needs to have a footprint, or the West needs to have a footprint in the Middle East, and they've chosen Palestinian lands to do that. We also understand, let's get to the matter at hand, and that is hundreds of Palestinian prisoners in Israel are set to go on an open-ended hunger strike to protest against the recent restrictions imposed on them. I'm kind of wondering, their situation, the prisoner situation, is dire as it is. Is the hunger strike going to serve them at all? It's just going to make them possibly very ill, malnourished. Some of them might even die due to the hunger strike. And I worry about that situation. What is your thoughts on this current situation? Do you think it's going to make a difference as far as the Zionist occupiers are concerned, and humanitarian organizations all around the world? Are we strong enough to be able to put that much pressure on the Zionist regime to at least allow these people who've been imprisoned unfairly, at least allow them the privilege of their families visiting them on a regular basis? That's the least we can expect, is it not?
Yeah, well, this is an important question, because one of the things that's happening right now is that the Zionist project has always been an imperialist, colonialist, fascist project targeting the Palestinian people. But the current government, for example, Itamar Ben-Gvir and Bezalel Smotrich, Ben-Gvir has been placed as the so-called Minister of Public Security. That means that he's been placed in charge of the daily lives of Palestinian prisoners. And in this role, he has, one time and time again attempted to impose new, even more fascist, even more restrictive, even more punitive rules and regulations targeting the Palestinian prisoners, targeting their human dignity, their lives, their communication with their families, their ability to access a prison store or to go for recreation. These kinds of actions are not only being done to exert further torture and abuse upon Palestinian prisoners, but to market the suffering of the Palestinian prisoners for votes inside the Zionist regime. Because one of the things, of course, that we're seeing right now is this high level of internal contradictions among Zionist officials, including about this issue. And one reason why we've seen, for example, security officials or the head of the prison administration say that they don't actually agree with cutting family visits isn't because these Zionist officials want to make life easier for Palestinian prisoners. On a daily basis, they're making life harder for Palestinian prisoners. But they're saying, oh, this is going to create an upsurge in the security situation, because the fact is that almost every Palestinian family has Palestinians locked behind bars, has an aunt, an uncle, a cousin, a mother, a father, a brother, a sister who is locked behind bars, who has been imprisoned in this colonial incarceration system. And so these attacks on the prisoners, while they're a form of collective punishment against the entire Palestinian population, also have the potential to really kind of light an explosive match in a situation that's already being exacerbated by these kinds of fascist attacks. So the Palestinian prisoners are very aware of this internal crisis within the Zionist regime and absolutely want to draw attention to that crisis in order to protect their own rights. I mean, there's a long history of hunger strikes inside Zionist prisons. And of course, Palestinian prisoners are not alone in the use of hunger strike as a form of struggle. Maher al-Akhras, who is one of 4 Palestinian prisoners who is currently on hunger strike against his administrative detention without charge or trial, has said before, he won his freedom in the past through a hunger strike that lasted 103 days. He has said that, when a Palestinian prisoner wants to resist, the hunger strike is his weapon of resistance. It's using his body because that's what he has behind bars to resist with. And so we've seen that every single one of the gains that Palestinian prisoners have won over the years, whether that's the right to not be exploited for their labor, or to even have family visits in the first place, has been won through collective struggle, through like hunger strikes. So the prisoners movement is definitely taking this in a very serious and strategic direction. But that's also why it's so important for those of us outside the prisons and those of us outside Palestine not to be silent about this issue, that we need to be putting pressure, particularly those of us in the West, right? We need to be putting pressure on our governments that are fully complicit with these crimes that are taking place against the Palestinian people. We need to mobilize. We need to get in the streets. We need to stand together with Palestinian prisoners on hunger strike, because this is an international issue. It's not limited to something that's only happening inside Zionist jails.
Okay, Charlotte, we're going for a short ad break. When we come back, 1 or 2 questions, and then we'll be wrapping up. So please stay with us.
Thanks so much.
Facebook.com/Salam Media.
One word that changes the life of a child. Orphan. One word to replace smiles with tears, confidence with anxiety, and a future with fear. Help Africa Muslims Agency to give these orphans a new word: hope. AMA's Orphan Hope program provides security for needy children in rural Africa, in Afghanistan, and in the Syrian and Palestinian refugee camps of Lebanon. For 15,000 Rand per year, you can change their life, give them hope, with Africa Muslims Agency, empowering, educating, inspiring.
Online schooling? Why not? Kurtuba Online Academy is the leading global online Islamic school from grade R to matric, offering South African caps and international syllabus. And it doesn't stop there. We also offer online madrasa for every grade. For more information, visit www.kurtubaonline.co.za. Kurtuba Online Academy, the leading global online Islamic school.
Kids these days are smart, and when you're competing for their attention against their smartphones, you need to make smart choices, like using Sunfoil triple refined pure sunflower oil in every meal you make. It's naturally cholesterol-free and approved by the Heart and Stroke Foundation as part of a balanced eating plan. So whether you're cooking, frying, or baking, you get the great tasting results that'll get their attention faster than the latest app. And if that doesn't work, change the Wi-Fi password. Sunfoil. Now we're cooking.
SANZAF's Meals Distribution Project aims to create food security for those in need. By supporting our program, you can help us in our mission to provide access to nutritious meals on a daily basis and help us extend our reach. Join SANZAF in the fight against hunger by contributing to our food security initiatives. To learn more, visit sanzaf.org.za or call 011 834 6046. SANZAF, changing lives through development and relief.
At Sentio, our Invest for Good philosophy is based on a genuine desire to use our investment skills for the benefit of broader society by investing responsibly, giving charitably, and developing talent that will transform the investment industry. Visit www.sentio-capital.com for more information about our Sharia investment products and start saving with us today. Sentio Capital. Invest for good. Sentio Capital Management is an authorized financial services provider.
With so many investment options today, it's only natural that you might feel a little confused which route to take. Should I buy shares or should I invest in gold bullion? Randery Jewelers now brings you the Zahab coin, an alternative to the Kruger Rand. The Zahab coin, a solid wealth protector in its purest form of 24-karat gold, is the safest way to protect your wealth. So don't just sit there and watch your paper money depreciate. Change to gold. Call Randery Jewelers now at 031 202 4701 or visit www.rjcoin.co.za, situated at 151 Essenwood Road, Musgrave, Durban. Randery Jewelers, the family name you can trust. Rejuvenating media day by day. This is Salam Media.
We're talking with Charlotte Case. She's the international coordinator of the Samidoun Palestinian Prisoners Solidarity Network. It's about the hunger strike that the Palestinian prisoners are going to be undertaking. I just want to share something with you, Charlotte. The International Committee of the Red Cross has once again called on Israel to respect the rights of Palestinian prisoners. And I quote, they say that under international humanitarian law, Palestinian detainees are protected persons and have a right to family contact. This includes family visits whilst in detention. Then the Palestinian Prisoner Society have also denounced the move, and Hamas criticizes it and says that this is open war against Palestinian people and Palestinian prisoners inside of Israeli prisons. Your response?
I mean, yes, these are quite accurate statements. In the first place, the Israeli occupation regime, the Zionist regime, has never shown any care or concern for international law when it comes to its treatment of Palestinians. It's been engaged in unlawful colonialism and occupation, I mean, from the existence of the Zionist project, which is fundamentally illegitimate. Even though, despite UN resolutions partitioning Palestine, that partition itself was illegitimate under principles of international law that uphold self-determination and the freedom of peoples to be freed from colonialism. And of course, this extends every day to what takes place inside the prisons. During interrogations, over 90% of Palestinians report having experienced some form of physical or psychological torture while under interrogation. So the Zionist regime routinely violates international law in its treatment of Palestinian prisoners. And the fact of imprisoning Palestinians inside occupied Palestine 48, inside Israel itself, that in itself is a violation of the Geneva Conventions, whereby an occupier removes people from their land and brings them inside the occupied territories. At which point, Palestinian prisoners are denied family visits in a whole array of ways on an ongoing basis. So not just through the mechanism of just saying, oh, you can only have a visit once every 2 months, but also because prisoners themselves will be banned from receiving family visits if they're being targeted in some way for repression, or if their political organization is being targeted for repression. So for example, you might see a declaration that the prisoners of Islamic Jihad will be denied visits for 2 months. The prisoners of the Popular Front for the Liberation of Palestine will be denied visits for the next month in a certain prison. So this is used all the time. The other mechanism that's constantly used is that the prisoners' families actually have to seek a permit from the Zionist regime in order to get on the buses provided by the ICRC to be taken to the prisons. And so what happens is that prisoners' families who have themselves been imprisoned, who have in some ways been detained by the Zionist regime, are themselves targeted politically, they're denied these permits on an ongoing basis. So you have many prisoners who have been denied seeing their brothers, their fathers, their mothers, because of this permit system, which only exists in order to make it more difficult and to impose an even greater sense of collective punishment. So this latest action by Ben-Gvir is kind of piling this on top of the ongoing kind of war on Palestinian prisoners and their families. And it's absolutely accurate to say that there's a war taking place against the prisoners. This isn't the only thing that's happened. I mean, the use of administrative detention, which is imprisonment without charge or trial, that's indefinitely renewable, so that Palestinians routinely spend years at a time locked up without ever being charged, ever being tried, even in the so-called military courts that convict over 99% of the Palestinians brought before them. Instead, this is just an arbitrary military order based on so-called secret evidence that even lawyers are forbidden from seeing. The rate of administrative detention has massively shot up in the last year, going from around 500 Palestinians held in administrative detention, which in and of itself is an awful statistic and a violation of international law, to currently there are over 1,200 Palestinians held under administrative detention without charge or trial. That's why even as we speak right now, there are 4 Palestinian prisoners, Maher al-Akhras, Kayed Fasfous, Sultan Khalouf, and Abdurrahman Baraka, who are all on hunger strike against their administrative detention. Just earlier this year, Sheikh Khadr Adnan, who won his freedom from administrative detention on 4 separate occasions by going on hunger strike, his life was taken on the 2nd of May of this year after 86 days on hunger strike, when the Zionist regime and the prison administration deliberately refused to take him to a hospital or provide him with any kind of emergency medical care, despite 86 days on hunger strike. And he was very conscious of this and warned that this was an attempt to assassinate him in order to erase this example of winning freedom through hunger strikes. And so the prisoners who are engaging in this strike right now against administrative detention are very aware of the example of Sheikh Khadr Adnan. Maher al-Akhras, who's one of the people on hunger strike, was one of the people who was kind of leading campaigns for his liberation. So they know the danger and the risk of the road of resistance that they're taking, but they're determined to kind of fight back against this injustice with all of the means that they have available to them, even their own bodies, lives, and health.
In closing, then, Charlotte, let's ask this question. How many prisoners are we talking about? What's the total sum of prisoners involved? And whilst they on this hunger strike, will there be medical assistance available just to monitor them? And those who become violently ill during this time, will there be hospital, hospital care available to them? Having just spoken about Khadr Adnan, who died shortly after he was released because they refused medical attention for him. Are the Israelis, are the Zionists going to take the same stance with the current prisoners when they go on hunger strike?
Well, the prisoners movement is really aware of this example of the case of Khadr Adnan and is very conscious of seeking to right the course and seek to hold the Zionist regime accountable for its crimes in the case of Khadr Adnan. There are over 5,100 Palestinian prisoners inside Israeli jails. These include men and women, children, and elders. Of these, approximately 1,200 are jailed without charge or trial under administrative detention. This is a general call for a strike from the Palestinian prisoners movement as a whole that encompasses all of the Palestinian political parties and trends, and all of the movements of the Palestinian people. So this is a collective hunger strike involving thousands of Palestinian prisoners. The prisoners movement will decide how to do the strike, whether all prisoners will start striking on the same day or whether they will go in batches in order to enter the strike. This is something that can kind of vary from collective hunger strike to collective hunger strike. In terms of access to medical care, in many ways, one of the steps that the prisoners are taking is, refusing to go to the prison clinics because the prison clinics themselves are completely untrustworthy and cannot be trusted to provide proper medical care, but also to emphasize the severity of the situation. So in terms of whether prisoners will be provided with proper medical care or whether the Zionist regime is going to try to assassinate them, as it did with Khader Adnan, that's why it is so important that the prisoner struggle is linked up with the Palestinian resistance outside prison, but also with our international movements for justice and liberation. Because the more that there is pressure and attention on the struggle of the prisoners, the more support there is for them to achieve their victory. And the more support there is to protect their lives and protect their health, even when they're putting everything on the line to fight back against injustice. And this is particularly important right now when there is such an internal crisis and contradiction within the Zionist regime, that the greater the level of pressure that exists, the stronger the ability and the will and the strength of the prisoners to highlight that contradiction and win their goal and stop Ben-Gvir's ongoing attacks on the prisoners, including this most recent attack on family visits. The prisoners recently have thwarted a few other attempts to impose these new fascist rules upon them, even before going on the collective hunger strike. So the more attention that we put on this issue, the more support we can provide to ensure that the prisoners are protected in terms of their health, in terms of their lives, and in terms of their rights, and in terms of their struggle for liberation.
Charlotte Cates, that we will leave it. Undoubtedly, we will keep an eye open. You keep up the amazing work. And please, God, let this, sanity prevail and the Palestinian people are liberated sooner rather than later. God bless. Thank you. Goodbye.
Thank you so much.
It is exactly 6 after 9 o'clock. We've overrun with the news issue, but it was a bit difficult breaking away from our guest. She's based in Canada, stayed up. It is almost 12 o'clock midnight in her part of the world, and I really do appreciate that. Amazing woman, amazing organization, and really was wonderful talking to her and knowing that there are still good, honest human beings around the world caring for the downtrodden all around the world. Let's go and see if our correspondent is available for the news, and that, of course, is Zai Jadwit.